Hey guys, Nike here. As you might have guessed, this video is about Quickness DPS Herald for raids and strikes. I've been playing this build a ton with my raid static, and while it's been an all-star for several months, it's gotten even better with the addition of Greatsword from the weapon mastery system in Secrets of the Obscure. Currently, it pumps out a ton of boons with relative ease and makes extremely good DPS. At the same time as that, it has many tools at its disposal that can bring additional defensive and support utility for your group in a pinch. All in all, from a sheer power perspective, it's one of the best builds in the game right now, period. So I hope you enjoy this build guide and are willing to give it a shot. Let's get into it. So for gear, we're going to use full berserkers in every slot with one exception. Our back piece will be dragon stats. If you don't have a legendary back piece and don't want to buy an ascended back piece for dragons, it's okay to use berserker, but just beware that you will overcap by a little bit and, you'll be slightly inefficient, but really no big deal. For runes, we are going to take Rune of the Dragon Hunter. This is a slight DPS increase over Scholar runes in this build. For Relic, we will go with Relic of the Thief. And our weapons are going to be Greatsword and Staff. And on both of them, the sigils will be Sigil of Force and Sigil of Air. You should be aware there are a couple fights where Sigil of Impact is better than Sigil of Air. But if you don't want to min-max a ton, Air should be your default. And it's really fine everywhere for the most part. If you are a gamer and you do use infusions, the choice is Mighty Infusions in every slot. And then for food, we are going to use Ascended Power and Ferocity food. And for utility consumables, we will use Writs of Strength. Or if you're not a Writ gamer, Superior Sharpening Stones will work. Our traits are built to maximize our DPS while ensuring we are able to maintain permanent quickness on our party while giving the most group might that we can contribute to make sure everyone in our subgroup is at 25 at all time. We are going to take Devastation, Invocation, and Herald. In Devastation, our picks are Unsuspecting Strikes, Notoriety, and Swift Termination. In Invocation, we want Rising Tide, Spirit Boon, and Roiling Mists. In Herald, we are going to go with Core Value, Shared Empowerment, and Elevated Compassion. For our legends, our default choices are Dragon and Assassin. These should be your default choices in places where you're not sure what to go with. But bear in mind, you will use Dwarf instead of Assassin quite often. Dwarf is going to sacrifice a bit of DPS, but you get access to a tremendous amount of stability. If you're doing raids or strikes, your group will likely expect you to provide stability in particular encounters where that is needed, and what you lose in personal DPS by switching to Dwarf, you will more than make up for it in group DPS by everyone being able to ignore big CCs or particular mechanics. Knowing when to use Dwarf really comes down to specific encounter knowledge, because while you can make quite a bit of stab, you can't exactly spam it freely and just hope it works. You need to know the specific mechanic that you're using it for and when that mechanic's going to happen, and using it at the right time. So really, practice makes perfect when it comes to that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the playstyle now. So one thing that's interesting with the playstyle of Herald is that the rotation does change slightly when you use Dwarf rather than Assassin. Because when you're playing with Dwarf, you always want your true nature to be available, because that is your easiest on-demand access to ability. Counting on Inspiring Reinforcement, otherwise known as the Road, in a pinch can be tricky because of its huge energy cost, especially because you're going to want to be maintaining your hammers in order to provide quickness, so you may not have the energy when you absolutely need it to cast the Road, whereas having True Nature, it doesn't consume any energy, So you always have stability on tap if that is the case. However, when you're in Assassin, you don't have to worry about that, so we change things up a little slightly. So basically the way that will work is that while we're attuned to Dragon, as we are now, and when using Assassin as we are now, we are going to use Facet of Chaos and Facet of Nature to make Quickness. And so that when we switch, so this will be our Herald Quickness generator. However, when we are in Dwarf, we won't be using True Nature. We'll leave that off cooldown, and you'll use Facet of Darkness instead. And these two, Chaos and Darkness, will be your Quickness generator. Now, bear in mind, these aren't hard and fast rules. If your group doesn't generate Fury, even when you're using Assassin, then you obviously should use Darkness instead, because if your group doesn't have Fury, the Fury from that will be a huge must. The benefit of using Facet of Nature as sort of like the default, I believe, is that the boon duration it gives exceeds your other players' 100% boon duration cap. So it will make all their boons just that much better. And we've all been in pugs. The alacrity can be sometimes a little sketchy. The might that your druid makes can be a little suspect. So if you're in a group, chances are this is going to turn, your average pug alacrity player into a pretty decent one, and will ensure that your team's uptimes are better than normal, which makes Facet of Nature an overall group DPS increase in those situations. And typically you're going to be in a group that can make your alacrity person is going to be able to make you some Fury, and therefore Facet of Darkness wouldn't actually do anything. One miscellaneous trick that I think is worth mentioning is that Greatsword 4 Imperial Guard is, or not Imperial Guard, True Strike, a channel block. What this means is that the entire time it's blocking, it will block all incoming hits, as many as you get hit by. This is a super powerful defensive tool to have access to. It can save your bacon in numerous encounters, and one that I recently used in a raid was there was a Deimos smash. I had no dodges left, and I had no Aegis, so the only thing that I could do was use my Greatsword 4, and it kept me from getting knocked off the platform. So that's really nice. The big upside is that the flip skill it gives you gets the coefficient of the skill gets more multiplicatively more powerful with every block that it does. So if you know that you're about to get hit by an attack that hits like 8 times, you can block, absorb all 8 attacks, and then hit with a truly massive thing. I think I hit a boss the other day for 75,000 damage with True Strike because I had blocked so many attacks while I was channeling it. So it's not part of your rotation, but it's something that you should know you have access to because it's pretty great. So let's talk a little bit more about that rotation. As far as the rotation goes, as always, I will show you guys a slow-mo version of the rotation and discuss what I'm doing so you can learn it easier. Before that, I will say that the rotation I'm going to demonstrate is quite simplified from the min-max Snowcrow's rotation. This does come at a cost of around 1,000 to 1,500 DPS, potentially. The upside is that it's significantly easier to learn and master and has a lot more wiggle room for utility and mechanics. If you want to go to the next level, by all means learn the SC rotation, especially if this class is your main and you want to go as deep as possible with it. But for 99% of players, this rotation is quite straightforward. The things to remember with the rotation is the overriding principle is that the 15% damage modifier from Burst of Strength is quite strong, and we organize our skills so that we get the most hard-hitting skills we can in during the buff period. Another thing that is super important is that each impact of Eternity's Requiem does count towards a proc of Impossible Odds. So really, we want all of these things to line up together. Eternity's Requiem is, of course, our most powerful skill, and so we want to ensure that we use it on cooldown and always use it under the Burst of Strength buff. Last thing worth noting is that interrupting your auto chain is usually DPS loss, so I try to avoid it as much as possible. However, in real fights where chaos creeps in, it's more important, in my opinion, to land your key abilities on time. So you notice in the combat footage of this build that I'm far less concerned with my auto chains than I am when hitting the golem. And additionally, when hitting the golem, I will often not delay my big skills like Eternity's Requiem, and that can mean interrupting an auto attack. Again, if this was a totally min-max Snowcrow's rotation, it would be set up so that there is no interrupted auto attacks and everything lines up perfectly. But this is more of a rotation that you can use under pressure and is quick to learn. So that won't exactly apply. And there will be, of course, inevitably times where you interrupt a chain in order to get to the meat and potatoes of your rotation. So with that preface done, let's go into the rotation itself. First up will be the slow-mo rotation with voiceover, and then I will play it at full speed, and then finally I will show it in an actual raid fight. So as we start the encounter, we are always going to start with our facet of elements, our facet of strength, our facet of chaos, and facet of nature on. You want these on as you're running in, so that as soon as the boon strip happens, boom, all your boons get reapplied. We're going to start with facet of elements and facet of strength, and then once we have our facet of strength buff up, we are going to activate the facet of nature active, and we will begin channeling our Eternity's Requiem. As we're channeling Eternity's Requiem, we are going to swap to Assassin and activate Impossible Odds. What this will do is it'll spend the energy while you're in Herald, but the hits will happen while you're in Assassin, meaning all the hits for Eternity's Requiem will land with Impossible Odds and really give you a nice opening burst. So what we want to do while we're in Assassin is use Greatsword 2 and 3 as often as we can without interrupting our auto attacks, if at all possible. And usually that's pretty straightforward. Once we are out of energy, it's time to switch back. We switch back to Dragon, immediately pop Elements and Burst of Strength. Now, once Burst of Strength is done, we can Eternity's Requiem and get another big hit in with Eternity's Requiem. And then when we're in Dragon for the rest of it, we want to use, again, Greatsword 2 and 3 whenever possible. As soon as True Nature and Facet of Chaos come off cooldown, we want to activate them to keep our Quickness up for our group. The Quickness will be pulsing at this point, and we'll be good to go. So what we're waiting for is Elements and Strength to come off cooldown again, so that we can then swap back to Assassin. So you'll see Elements is good, Strength is good, and we have our Burst of Strength. So now, again, we activate, and it's going to be the same loop as last time. We have a little bit of time on Requiem, so we can get in a Greatsword 2 and 3 really quick, and then switch to Eternity's Requiem, and again, swap to Assassin and Impossible Odds. And then that's it. That is the loop of the rotation. It just goes like that over and over again. Essentially, the things you can see, it's all about maintaining Burst of Strength as much as we can and making sure our Eternity's Requiem lands while we are in Burst of Strength, and making sure we get, when we're in Assassin, our Eternity's Requiem hitting with the Impossible Odds, and then using Greatsword 2 and 3 whenever we can without interrupting our auto attacks as much as we can avoid, and and essentially not delaying Eternity's Requiem. And here we go. We can switch back to Dragon, use Elements and Strength, and you can probably guess after we activate Burst of Strength what skill's coming next. You guessed it, Eternity's Requiem. And then we're going to do a Greatsword 3 and 2. Then activate Chaos and True and Facet of Nature. And then we're going to auto attack for a little bit, again, till we have Greatsword 2 and 3 up. And then, as you'll see, after we get Greatsword 2 and 3, it's going to be time to switch back to Assassin, meaning we're going to Burst of Strength, Eternity's Requiem, and swap to Shiro and drop our nuke on the boss. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm not going to keep playing this for the next 50% of the Golem's life. But yeah, that's basically the principles. It's a perfect or close to a perfect loop every time. So you're going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to end this talk over part, play it in normal time, and then show you a boss fight to sort of give you a view of it in action. So that's it, guys. I hope you really dig this build. Please give this one a try. I'm sure many of you have, because it's just so OP and it's everywhere. And let me know how you like it in the comments below. If you have any questions or any tips that you'd like to add for prospective Quick Heralds out there, please leave them below. And anyway, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.